So it's interesting how on the write-up for Frostbite, how the title of this course, Bushcraft or Bush Medicine, it didn't have a question mark, but when I showed up here, people who knew me, they're like, it's Bush Medicine, it's Bush Medicine. My whole goal with this is to get people curious. So before people arrived, we got people curious, so that's exactly what I wanted. So I'm Burr Roberts. I'm a nurse. I'm trained in heart rate variability via heart math and a couple of different modalities of them. I'm a functional breathing coach and I've done a lot of different breathwork courses. I'm trained in health leadership, change management, and I'm also a level 1 free diver. That's the most recent one I got. I got that last month. So exploring that side of breathwork. My whole goal is health literacy, as we'll get into it in this course. As we go through this, please feel free to ask questions if things don't make sense. It's like small group. I want you to leave understanding instead of leaving confused. Okay? Any questions before I go on? Awesome. Yep.
What's a level 1 free diver?
It's the entry level, so you just learn the basics. So I'm not a free diver who I'm going really deep. I don't think I'll ever aspire to that. It's just learning the basics and the safety of breath work for free diving. Free diving is, those who don't know, it's where you go swimming, holding your breath, and you hold your breath for a long time and you go either, some people swim deep, some people just swim around and spearfish, so it's level 1 of that. So what to expect, we're going to go through some definitions, different lenses of how to view health and well-being, some frameworks to give ourselves guidance as we go through our learning, and we're going to link all of this to bushcraft/outdoor activities. And most importantly, the relationship to you, what you can take away from this and what you can do moving forward. Whoops, back. So I have to remember where to point this. So definitions of well-being. Any idea what? Throw out some cues of what is a definition of well-being.
Being comfortable.
Comfortable? As in free of pain?
Yeah.
Yep.
Peaceful.
Peaceful. So being trained from the medical model view, well-being, in my opinion, for medical model isn't really a thing. It's more about, are you managed or are you not? So well-being is just taking that step back from the medical model of how are you as a person. So it's not just your pain point and why you go see a health professional, but it's also emotionally, spiritually, physically, how you move around, how you function in your day-to-day. It's incorporating everything, your relationships, your community. Well-being is how well things are for every aspect of your life. So medicine, I kind of talked on that. That's like the healthcare model, where that's where you have a pain point, an issue, you go get that checked out, you deal with that, they give you their little prescription and you come back. So it's not as encompassing. So I work more in the well-being side. The healthcare system, I still work in it. It has its place. But then we step back and see the whole you and the whole community. That's where I like to work. That's what fills me up. So bush medicine. Give me some ideas of what bush medicine, what that title, what that word, phrase means to you. There's no wrong answer.
The treatments that can be foraged from the wild.
So what was the first word?
Treatments.
Treatments that can be foraged from the wild. Yep.
Have treatments that you can forage from the
Yep.
environment yourself, perhaps.
Great, awesome. Any other?
Maybe like alternative ways of healing or well-being that aren't really in like the mainstream.
Alternative ways of healing being not in the mainstream, yes. So does anybody have any examples of what that could be? Challenging you on purpose. It's either too afraid to say it or like crickets.
Things like crystals or things like that. Some people believe that can help you.
Yep. crystals, so the reason on crystals is each crystal, each type of rock vibrates at a different energy. So that different energy, when you have it near you or around you, gives you a different vibration. And it's either synergy, the vibration works with the vibration of your body, and then it builds you up, and that's the healing part. Or its vibration conflicts with yours and it doesn't feel good. So that's how that rocks and crystals go. Underneath all of this, I actually am wearing jasper stones on me. So I use that as a healing as well. So yes. So basically, bush medicine, most people do consider bush medicine as medicinal plants. So if you don't know what that thing in the middle, and I don't know why it's not focusing, but that's where you extract essential oils and hydrosols, which is like a rose water, the waters that you get when you also make essential oils. So that's normally what most people think of. I hope when you leave today that you're going to have more ideas of what bush medicine and well-being will be. So of course, like any other good bushcrafter, and I don't know why it's not loading properly, but like any other good bushcrafter, I went to ChatGPT to get ChatGPT's advice of how to be a good bushcrafter and well-being coach. Thank you, technical person. Yeah, it says it's offline. Okay. So GPT, does anybody not know what that is? Everybody knows what it is? ChatGPT is artificial intelligence where you input something and it gives you something back really fast. So I literally just put in, give me an outline of a presentation for bushcraft or bush medicine. Yeah. Look at that. So it came up with 5 points. Sorry, I don't have this memorized. So ancestral wisdom meets modern survival. So do you have a thumbs up or thumbs down? Do you agree with that? Ancestral wisdom meets modern survival. So do you think that's a yes? For the most part, the ancestral wisdom part, yes. The survival, no. Because survival isn't medicine. Survival isn't bushcraft. Bushcraft is being comfortable in nature and being how to live and thrive in nature. That's what bushcraft is. Survival is like what Bear Grylls does, and well, that's not bushcraft. So ChatGPT got partially right. So medicinal marvels of the wild. Ooh. Marvels. I would not have used that word, but fits in well. It's a typical ChatGPT thing. So basically, that's what we were talking about before, the medicinal properties of plants. Synergy of survival and wellness. Well, I think you might already have figured that one out again, the survival. So synergy, what is that?
Like working together.
Things that produce better results for
Yeah. So survival and wellness, do they really go together? No. In my opinion, when I think down of like what you define each word to be. So again, it's that survival piece. Bushcraft, yes. Survival, no. Comfort in nature, yes. Survival, no. Survival is like you're surviving to live. Wellness is not surviving. Cultural, indigenous perspectives, yes, I would agree with that, but as it also gave out more descriptions of what this was talking about. They did miss the mark on their description. Hands-on experiences, yes, I would add to that. So hands-on experience is the hard skills, that's the knife skills, the making the fire skills. So I say yes, I would add to that the soft skills, the judgment piece, the awareness, and how to apply different knife skills in different woods and different situations and different things you want to have for outcomes.
So you didn't say anything to ChatGPT about survival, you just said bushcraft.
Yep, I said,
Came up with the word survival on its own.
yep. So, small group, let's have a discussion. How would you define bushcraft?
Not
Okay.
survival.
Not survival. You're very clever. Anything else? I kind of touched on a few things.
Comfort and confidence outdoors.
Comfort, confidence, outdoors.
Skills that are directly related to being in the bush.
Skills related to be in the bush. Yep. Because I would agree. As I raised my children in suburbia and I met a lot of suburban families, we would go to the park and their kids would be wearing like little 2-year-olds are wearing white shoes and like, oh, don't go in the rocks where all the playground stuff is because you'll get your shoes dirty. Or don't touch the rocks, it's dirty and got germs. I'm like, no, the city's got germs, the nature's got the good ones. We'll get into that. So, anything else you want to add to what bushcraft means to you? How about I just go to the next slide? Basically, what does bushcraft mean to you?
Is it like the combination of soft skills and hard skills?
Well, there's no right or wrong. What does it mean to you? Is that what it means? Combination of hard and soft skills?
And I think like spirituality can tie into like soft skills.
Yeah, spirituality and the mindfulness and connection with nature. So when I first started this and I said that when I came here, my title of this course, Bushcraft or Bush Medicine, didn't have a question mark, but when I got here, people responded to me like it was a question. And they said, it's bush medicine, Burr. It's bush medicine. I'm like, okay, awesome. Well, why? And the usual answer I got was like, I just feel better when I'm out in nature. So that's a big part of it. So through the years, I have heard people talk about this connection with nature. You feel like that's like your spiritual, your meditative place, that place where you can ground and center and slow down. The thoughts go, like this crazy thoughts of being in the city, work, life, stresses, everything kind of goes away. And that's where people feel good. And yes, the hard skills, the soft skills, the independent self-reliance. And this one's from Brian Rice, A Man's Versions of Arts and Crafts. That's bushcraft, the man's version of arts and craft. Also the community, like this weekend shows exactly the community and how you can support each other. So people who've made the knife sheaths or other things, they're like, oh, that's awesome, well done. We're supporting each other. So that means you're noticing somebody, you're appreciating them, showing you what they have accomplished, building them up. In that process, you build yourself up. So as a nurse, I really like to teach about how your body works. And if you ever get me in a corner and you ask me a question, I'm like having to bite my tongue of like, I want to give you an encyclopedia version, and you're looking for a 2-sentence cold notes version. So I always have to find myself to bite my tongue, slow down. So basically the message is community, there's healing in community. Seniors, there's a lot of research about people in general, but more the research is in seniors. Seniors who have community connections with people, they are more independent and they live longer than people who don't. Without having community, people tend to have more chronic health conditions and they tend to not have the same life expectancy. So I put in an endurance personal limit. So through this community, you have heard some people talk about, and some people have been involved with and aspire to be on the Alone Show. So the Alone Show, in my opinion, is great. It shows some skills, and it's great what people can do. I wouldn't go on that because I don't feel like I have those skills, but I mostly wouldn't go on that show because I don't feel like I could endure. So in my opinion, bushcraft isn't enduring. I just hear Moore's Chansky in my head saying, Bushcraft is about thriving in nature. The more you know, the less you carry, and just being able to meet your needs with what's around you instead of having to carry everything with you. So I added endure and personal limits because there's a difference between the two, and I just wanted to differentiate. To me, enduring, the alphaism of I can do bigger, stronger, more, longer than you, that's more on the survival side. That's not on the wellness side. So I put that in there more for conversation. But personal limits, each of us has personal limits. So the people who go and want to aspire to go on the Alone show, their personal limits and their skill base is different than some of us who are coming to Frostbite for the first time, just learning about bushcraft. And again, connection with nature, hug a tree. There it goes. Okay, so what bush medicine is not? Any suggestions? Yeah. Pharmaceutical. You're clever. Pick up on things well. So yes, it's not first aid. It's not survival. It's not safety avoiding. So I will use cold water exposure, jumping into, chipping a hole in the ice and jumping in there. People endure that, or people can do that purposefully. So if any of you were at my talk last bush or Frostbite, the course was cold exposure as medicine. So safety avoiding, I'll use jumping in a cold water. There's safety in there, and yeah, so anyways, not safety avoiding. And not healthcare. And again, that whole survival, endure thing, the last person standing, I think I've touched on that and you picked up on my theme already. So I don't know if it's the internet, but this has a delay. It's not working every time. So I'm going to go back, just so we don't. So I come from a nursing healthcare background. I work in the system. Its system has its place. But again, we step back from that system, take that whole well-being view, self-awareness, what your pain points are, how you're feeling. That's where I work. That's where I try to teach. That umbrella is called health literacy. I want you to be literate in your health. How to navigate the healthcare system, how to navigate outside the healthcare system, how you're feeling, what your pain points, diagnosis, health status is, to navigate all that with all the bombardment that we get from the world and the people who say they know. So social media is a very good place. The influencers of you need to do this, you need to do that. If you don't do that, then you're never going to get well. So there's a lot of information we're sent. There's a lot of conversations that we have, like for another example of a lot of health professionals and people say, take a deep breath. Well, let's break that down, because remember, I'm a breathing coach. I really think about breathing and how that works for you. So when somebody says take a deep breath, what do? Well, just do that right now. Take a deep breath. Do you feel more relaxed? I don't feel more relaxed. I actually feel like I get this tiny little headache. I feel like I'm a little more stressed. I feel more stress in my shoulders just with one breath that didn't even take like more than a second. The physiology of breathing. So breathing and breath work is changing your rate, rhythm, depth, and sound of your breath. So that was breathing through my mouth. Functional breathing point of view, you want to breathe through your nose. Functional breathing point of view, you want your breath to be quiet. That wasn't quiet. Functional breathing point of view, you want to have control of your breath. Well, was that in control? No, that's just like taking a dumbbell and just dropping it on the bottom, where you want to control up and down, not just Functional breathing point of view is you want to have a slow, controlled breath and through your nose. And anyways, that deep breath was anything but functional breathing. But what does everybody say, even health professionals? Take a deep breath. So taking a deep breath, what we want from people, and the intention is to actually calm down. So how do you switch that take a deep breath? That's, if you're capable of, take a slow, full breath through your nose, quietly, slow breath out. So if you try that, do a now how do you feel versus the through your stomach, not through your chest? Maybe, I'm hoping, possibly, you might feel calmer, warmer, more relaxed. All of us will experience it differently, but the intention of take a deep breath is there. The follow through is lacking. So this is all under the umbrella of health literacy. So there's Mackenzie Health Institute released an article December 2022, so just over a year ago. It talked about escaping the healthcare matrix. And we'll wait for the delay again. There it is. The secret to great health, escaping the healthcare matrix. So that means a lot of things. So as we read the bottom two sentences, we'll read it slowly and really think about what it's saying. The blueprint to achieve a lifetime, so not just in the next month, but a lifetime of great health is increasingly clear and within our control. But unlocking it requires challenging the orthodoxies currently guiding individuals and institutions. So let's go back to that deep breath. We talk about a deep breath. We have good intentions asking people to take a deep breath, but the execution of how we do that does not actually physiologically mete out what our outcome wants to be. So when we change that deep breath to a full breath through our nose quietly, slow in, slow out, that's better for our physiology. So that's what I'm talking about, where that breath is in your control. How you do that breath is in your control. But first you need to be aware of it. First you need to be literate and have the understanding that there is a difference between the outcomes on how you do that deep breath. And that me talking about a deep breath with all my other co-workers in the healthcare system, they're like, I don't get what you're saying, Burr. I'm like, I know you don't. Can we slow down? Anyways, it's a bit easy work environments. It's hard to have these conversations, but let's go through this. So the blueprint, so the pathway to achieving a lifetime of great health is increasingly clear. A lot of science and research is telling us this, but the healthcare system and current research can take up to 20 to 25 years to become common practice if it doesn't conflict with current practices. There's a lot of common research that comes up that does not get to become common practice like breath work because it conflicts with the current system. And lobbyists, anyways, I won't get political. Unlocking, it requires challenging the orthodoxies currently guiding individuals and institutions. So, know how I talked about the healthcare systems here, and I work in this well-being system back here, this whole umbrella. So that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to bridge that gap from being in the healthcare system, thinking of your health and well-being here, taking a step back, and putting all things together. So this isn't new concepts. Like we've always talked about spirituality, mental health, mindfulness, meditation, maybe how to get rid of your back pain. Like it's not new information. It's organizing it in a different way and making you more literate and more educated and more aware of how it all comes together. Does that make sense? Any question around that? So I'm going to move a little bit faster. I'm going to run out of time. So basically health literacy, this is my framework. Impacts your well-being, so remember that step, that outside in the back. It's your ability to access, understand, evaluate, and communicate information, like that deep breath. Promotes, maintains, and improves your health. That slow, deep breath is going to help you a lot more than that fast one through your mouth. In a variety of settings across multiple modalities and approaches, and throughout your life. So because we're here, Frostbite, and we're talking about bushcraft, I'm going to relate this to bushcraft. So in your literacy toolbox, just like any other toolbox, the more tools you have, the more things you can do. Similar to what Mors Kochanski says, the more you know, the less you carry. Same idea. I'm hoping to help increase the tools in your toolbox, but the toolbox changes. So there's that toolboxes for whatever that was, woodwork. There's a toolbox here for bushcraft. And the gear you use depends on the situation you go to. So this is the gear I took on a canoe trip last summer on the Manitowoc in Manitoba versus me doing a winter camp out with all the gear. So the tools you use in different situations, some of it's overlapping, some of it's not, but how to apply the different tools that you have in different situations.
Is that an overnighter?
Yep. My flow is being kiboshed here. So anyways, that first article in the Kenzie Health Institute, they talk about 23 health drivers. So 23 health drivers, I want to point out 19 of these 23 health drivers rely within you. 4 are in the healthcare system. So what drives health and well-being and longevity, all are in your control. 4 in the healthcare system. So let me put that into perspective of the area I work in. If you have a toothache, where do you go? Dentist. So the dentist you might see 20 minutes a year. The rest of the time when you're at the dentist, if you go for your cleaning 2, 3, 4 times a year, depending on who you are, who do you see? The dental hygienist. And the other 99% of the time, who do you see? Yourself. So how much you floss, how much you brush, how your oral care is in your control 90% of the time of the year. 1% of it is with the dental hygienist who kind of teaches you and guides you. That's my role. Then then when you have a toothache or see that dentist, that 20 minutes a year, that's there when you need it. So when stuff goes bad, you have that dentist there. So you can, does that make sense? So I'm that dental hygienist helping teach you how to floss and brush your teeth and when you drink your coffee and how that affects your enamel and all that stuff. That's my role. So that's the 19 of the healthcare drivers. So let's just have discussions around some of these photos. So we're going to talk about, think of exposure. As you look at this photo, please share with me, what do you think of exposure in this photo? What kind of exposures do you see? Freezing, similar to what weather we're seeing. And the exposure of being fully clothed and bundled up versus in shorts. What else?
The sunlight doesn't look like there's sunglasses on.
Yep. So they're being exposed to cold weather, sunlight, what else? Exactly. So the exposure to the air that you will get in nature versus being next to the busy road in downtowns. The sunlight, nature, exactly. So let's do the same thing, next photo. If it'll let me. I'm hoping by getting closer. There you go. What about this one? I'm not trying to trick you, just seeing what we can come up with. grasses. People with allergies might not like this photo. Relaxation. Yep. Exposure to maybe bugs. Winds.
Sun exposure.
Yep. Sunlight in the morning. There's a lot of research saying if you, in the first 20 minutes or so of going outside, after you wake up, if it's sunlight yet, go and get at least 5 minutes of direct sunlight. That you can be in the shade, but just being in sunlight outside has a really good, that how it affects your eyes affects, pardon me, I believe, your serotonin and your melatonin. They're kind of related neurotransmitters in your brain. So having that sunlight in the morning for a few minutes helps your melatonin and how you sleep at night.
And it changes whether or not you're like looking at it through the window or
Yes. Yeah, you want to be outside and have more direct light. Yeah. Yeah. So what about this photo? What kind of exposure is this one? Yes, allergies. If you can eliminate allergies, what are other things that you could see in this one? Yep. Which is what? Touching plants is, how about I just give you the answer? So, you know how we talked about plant herbs and plant medicines and essential oils and aromatherapy? Same thing. You're getting the aromatherapy just in micro doses by being in nature. 2, well, I already talked on it, the microbiome, the germs, what people call germs. The microbiome, the tiny little microorganisms that live in the city, kind of, to me, the city's where you get all the sick germs. Here, there's an amazing amount of microbiome in nature, and there's been research showing that you get more gut microbiome diversity by being in nature. So just touching that and touching your face, being around it in the wind and everything moving around helps with your microbiome. So that's another thing to think about, the microbiome that you're around. What about pollutants? Yeah. So you can think of pollution as the city pollution, but there is a little bit, especially when you're around fires and think about your exposure to the fires. But also, what else do you see your exposure to? It looks like somebody's wildcrafted a bunch of greens and mushrooms. So your exposure to different types of foods when you're in bushcraft mode. So just to add more ideas about exposure, so temperature variation, summer, winter, variation of temperatures in a day from like morning to mid-afternoon. Your seasons. Kelly Harleton and Morris Kachansky, they talk about the first snowfall of every year. They will go and grab that snow and rub it all over their hands, rub it on their ears and their neck, all to start acclimatizing themselves for winter. So then it teaches their body how to deal with the cold. So then they don't need to have their ears covered as much as other people at colder temperatures or wear gloves as often, because they're teaching their physiology how to cope with the cold. So there's temperature variations. We all experience that. -5 in October is like, oh, I want to stay home. -5 in April or March, you're like, oh, please get me outside. It's the exact same thing. So our body is smart and responds to the environment we give it. Or the responds to the information we give it, and by us staying in a centralized heating, going to our car in the garage and turning on the heats, could go in to work in our underground parking, to our central heated work, we get acclimatized to that, versus people who commute all the time on their bike or walk to work or spend days in nature with no hot tent. They are acclimatized differently. So water, the different water that you get from our tap versus out in nature. Like we said, the air, scenery, sky, even the altitude. We had I'm more in Calgary, so I get to the mountains more. I ski at Sunshine, so I'm up at 2 kilometers above sea level. versus people who are in Vancouver who are at sea level. So yeah, different altitudes. So we're also, when we're bushcrafting, we're in day and night cycles. We're around that. That influences our day, how we are going to navigate and organize our activity levels. And so because of that day-night cycle, that we're a little more in tune with our circadian rhythm. So each of these topics I can really get in deeper and like go further, but I will, I can have my own discussion with each one of these, so I'm trying my best to slow down. Also, the exposure of clothing, what clothing we choose to wear when we're out in nature and out doing bushcraft.
When you say that, is that like the materials you're using, or
Yeah.
like how warm you are?
Both. Mostly the materials, like how many of us can wear some synthetic clothing, like say nylon clothing that we're in the city, but when we're going bushcrafting by a fire, we're not wearing the nylon and polyesters, we're wearing the wools and the cottons. So that is exposure and how that affects us. So exposure of how, like footwear. Footwear has its place, and there's also a place to not wear footwear. There's earthing and grounding. How do I explain this for people who don't know? Static electricity, getting a shock when you touch things. So we have this energy, static electricity in our body, and a good way to get rid of that is just walking barefoot, touching the earth, sitting on our cotton and wool clothing and sitting on the ground. That static electricity in us goes out into the earth. And the indigenous communities talk about this as being a healing practice, where they would, I've heard stories in the past where they would dig a hole in the ground, they'd start a fire, they'd warm up the ground, they'd move the fire, they'd lay somebody who wasn't feeling well in the on the ground in that hole, they'll cover them up, and that person will stay there for, I don't know how long, days, hours, I'm not sure. And then they'd be well after. So it was used as medicinal practices in the past. So there's places for footwear and there's times to not have footwear. So use your judgment on that, just different exposure ideas. Then one more thing is just like EMFs, electromagnetic frequencies, and cell phones and all this Wi-Fi's that were around in the city. You're not around that in nature. I remember I was doing a 10-day canoe trip up in the northern Saskatchewan and the Shield with Dale and Colleen. And we didn't see roads, airplanes, no cell service of any kind in this country. I did the whole trip barefoot. How, like that internal feeling of how I felt, even though I was in the bush doing paddling and taking care of my kid and doing all this for 10 days, it was kind of exhausting. But I felt so much better at the end of that trip than I did at the beginning. From everything, the exposure to nature, the earthing, the being away from Wi-Fi and EMFs, like all of it. Circadian rhythms with the nature. Anyways, the next one, like city life. That's kind of what our life feels like. So much going on in our head, and like where do we put our priorities? So when we think of stress levels, compared to that, how do we get more of this in our city life? That's the question I posed for you, and that's the question I want you to leave here. How do we get more of this in your city or regular life? Just do it. I like that. So, what do you see in this picture when you think of stress? What do you think's going on?
She looks like she's communing with nature.
Yep, just at one in the moment she's in.
Yeah, decompression.
Yep, letting that stress go, finding an outlet for that. So, kind of talked on this cold exposure part and water before, like Krista, want to go with me into this? Usually the answer is hard no.
Well, you got a baby.
That's because of peer pressure?
No, but because I've tried
Baby steps.
to get here.
It was a pure no at one point. So I'm going to go to the next photo. And again, let's think about stress. First, let's look at her face. Come on. You can do it. You can make it. There we go. Look at his face. So the same activity can have different outcomes, just like the deep breath story. So Brady, who is one of the instructors here this weekend, he was telling me a story yesterday how he used to live in Vancouver, and when he's in Vancouver, he had this group that would get together and go into cold plunge. There's this one pool that had a cold pool, kind of like a hot tub, and they go together as a group and go into this cold pool together. And this really nice community is really warm, encouraging people. Sorry, wrong way. It was kind of like this. Everybody is happy, they're calm, they're relaxed, they're peaceful. It just felt good. Then he said that there's this group of guys who are alpha males, they're all friends, they all decided, we need to do this too. And they came in, there's like, yeah, I can do this! Woo! Versus the rest of the group that was, this is awesome. You feel the energy between the two? So the nervous system and physiology that happens when you do the exact same activity from a calm place versus a activated place gives you a different physiology, just like that deep breathing. How are you going to do that deep breathing and what's your outcome? Do you want to activate yourself? Maybe do that fast, loud, deep breath, or you do that really slow, calm, controlled, quiet through your nose, full breath. Same activity, same breath. How you do it is what matters, because each way is going to give you a different outcome. So going back to the stress, the mental challenges that you see in everyday life versus in the city, and there's this thing called eustress, manageable stress. Learning how to take high stressful situations, like say that water exposure, and make it in a way that's nice and calming, manageable. Maybe similar to what Krista's doing, small little baby steps, and then maybe I'm open to it instead of a hard no, or having to, I can outdo you on that cold thing, watch me stay in longer. Like there's a difference between the two. So, what about this guy? What do you think's going on here when you think of a health and well-being, state of being? What do you observe in this photo?
Looks like he's going on a trip
Yep.
into the mountains.
Yep. And I'm sure most of us in this room going, yeah, yes, please, can I come? So that's going to fill us up seeing that. Some people seeing that are like, oh God, no, let me go to the spa, please. But I want you to notice, where is he looking? Up. So it was very interesting. I was at a backcountry lodge, and they had this book of photos of people in the mountains and doing all this wilderness stuff. And as I flipped from page to page, showing all these people doing these activities, and like say they were just walking on a path, all of them. Every single photo in this 100-page book, they are all looking at the ground in front of them. Not a single one of them was looking up, looking around and taking in where they were. They're magical photos of nature and like mountains, waterfalls. Like, it was beautiful. All of them in all the photos. The whole like 100-page book. Every single one, they're looking at the ground. When you think of being in nature, when you think of being attuned to nature, when you get out in nature as somebody who's just wise and have been in there and they're like, oh, did you hear that birds? There's something going on over there. We need to go over there. I think or all of a sudden you notice we need to be alert now because everything just got quiet. All the animals, everything around us got quiet. Something's around, what's going on? Or there's this type of bird over here. They usually don't collect in a group, but now they're in a group. So why is that happening? Maybe there's a food source for that bird right there. So as you are more mindful, listen, see, and observe your surroundings, then you're in a different state of being versus this guy looking around versus all those people accomplishing these big tasks in this book, and they're all enduring. Oh, the delay. Just different ideas. Again, circadian rhythm out there in the morning, getting that sunlight, calm, mindfulness, being in nature. Like, there's so many things. Think state of being. There's some beliefs, attitudes, your different thoughts that you have. People talk about being in nature and bushcraft and doing their thing, that their thoughts are calmer. They're in a happier place. They're more optimistic. And you tend to have an absence of conflict. The things that stress you and things you have to address when you're back in regular life, they don't seem relevant when you're out in nature sometimes. You tend to be more in the present moment. There's also community. Similar to what we're experiencing this weekend. Being in your happy place. Having fun. Being a little goofy. So let's talk about daily living. Now let's take away your bushcraft brain, and yes, the Karamat Wilderness Ways would not like those rocks around the fire pit. Unless, yes, the fire's too far away from the shelter, so put those out of your head. But your daily living when you're out in something like this would be different than your regular daily living. So when you're thinking of this as taking that step back in that well-being view, any thoughts, anything that comes to mind when you think of a well-being view, being in this place, what is well-being in here? Like,
Waking up in nature, which to me is very calming.
yep. Being in nature, waking up in nature, waking up with the cycles of the earth and the sunlight, the microbiome, all that thing. So it's new things. What about sense of accomplishment? So if that was your camp, you kind of cleared it of the bush and made it a place for you. You have your shelter and your other things. Maybe you're a pile of wood. So you have a sense of accomplishment in that. Maybe there's some hobbies and stuff, like it's just like maybe you never sleep in that shelter, but just the act of doing something, practicing your skills, that sense of accomplishment, the satisfaction you get. And what are you not consuming when you're in this environment? Pollution. Social media, screens. And there's this thing called altruism, being concerned for the well-being of others. So if you bring friends here, you want them to be comfortable, so you're going to have that set up for them before they come. And then there's actual physical movement. Our movement and exercise and what we have to do to get that firewood. And the knowledge of what kind of wood to get. I'm sure most of us know, like dry versus green wood, dry standing, that sort of thing. Again, sense of accomplishment. What are you going to do with that wood? Does it mean it has to be firewood? But it could be for your shelter. It could be for a chair. It could be for a pretty Instagram photo. Who knows? So when you're out in nature compared to the city, in the city, we have these manufactured floors. It's all flat. There's no change in view, in variation of what we step on. Once you get off the pavement, out of floors, out of buildings, we're on uneven ground. Every single step we take is a different step because we are stepping on a different surface. It might be the same field, the same path, but how that path works on your foot, because of the different angles, you get to use different range of motions of your foot, your ankles, your knees, your hip, your back, all the way up. So this is more of around the line of functional movement, which I'm super passionate about, but again, that's for a different topic. Versus when we're in the city, when we need to chill, majority of us go sit in our chair. Where we have that recliner, we have our chair of like you get home and you're just, now I can stop. Now I can slow down now that you're in your chair or in your bed. People who bring chairs out when they get out to nature, they sit in them longer versus people who don't bring chairs and they sit on different logs, rocks, ground, they move more often. So my friend who's a functional movement practitioner, people ask her, well, if sitting's so bad, not that it's bad, if sitting is not so good, then what's the best position to be in? And her answer is the next position. It's not that one position is wrong. It's just if you're in that one position for too long, then our body, again, just like breathing, there's different outcomes from staying in the same position versus moving positions a lot. So again, another topic. Come on, delay. So another example of different positions. So this is something that all children are able to do when they first start learning to be mobile, is doing a flat-footed squat. Because we sit in chairs in our modern life, we lose that ability. I'm one of them. I went through years of working on how to get that back. I was pretty much there. I could do it, but my toes flailed out. I couldn't do it with my toes pointed forward. Then I got busy and distracted. Now I can't do it again. I can barely get down and balance in a wide toes out squat. So I myself can't do that. But having this ability to do this flat-footed squat, research tells us, and our observations tell us, people who can do this are more independent and more functional in their life for longer. So when we get into our older years, we live longer, more independent. We're able to do activities like bushcraft and camping and outdoor things. We can do that longer, or the people who can do this position can do that stuff longer. Again, all the microbiome and everything that goes with that photo. So it's just another photo to show about how different positions, touching the ground, microbiome, uneven ground, how you're going to move. That's going to affect your different strengths, your different flexibility, range of motion, your balance, your coordination, some fine motor skills. Now, a new sciencey thing, acronym is NEAT, N-E-A-T, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. I like big words. I like people going, what are you talking about, Burr? What is NEAT? So most of us talk about, as we get older, oh, I need to get fit. I need to exercise more. There's this thing called NEAT, similar to what she's doing, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So good way to wrap your head around this is when people go exercise, they put on different clothing. People who do non-exercise activity thermogenesis, they wear the same clothing. So it's the matter of when you're in the city, parking at the far end of the parking lot, walking in and taking the stairs. Those things. In nature, you do those things automatically, especially when you take that chair away. You tend to move around more. Collecting firewood, that can be more exercise, get you sweating and breathing heavier. But just walking through the bush to go grab the kindling off the trees, like the spruce, dry spruce stuff, that's more the NEAT stuff. Research is telling us the more we can do this more NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Thermogenesis is like increasing our heat production in our body, which relates to our metabolism. Sorry, getting too sciencey again, but ultimately it's meaning it's better for us. In this well-being point of view, the more we can do walking around and movement, the better for us. So again, breathing. What do you notice? Mostly, I notice breathing through the mouth. So the mindfulness session I did this morning, we used breath work and we worked on breathing through our nose. So my advice is if you ever notice yourself breathing through your mouth, whatever your activity is, ask yourself, what do I need to do to be able to do that activity breathing through my nose? And I will just say breathing through your nose for your longevity and health, similar to that flat-footed squat, will be better for you. So ask yourself, what can I do to do that activity, say collect firewood? Or, what can I do to be able to do that activity breathing through your nose? And challenge yourself, can you do it through your nose? Because we should be able to do everything in life breathing through our nose. The only thing we shouldn't is, one, I won't mention because it's not appropriate. Two is swimming. So is ChatGPT right? No, we're smarter than ChatGPT. I should know my slide deck better, but I don't. So we don't care about those points. So now when you go do any of your bushcraft activities, when you think about how you're moving through that activities, the uneven ground, what you're exposed to, the water, the air, the nature, the microbiome, the different positions you're in, the mindfulness, being aware, your stress level. When you think of all those things we've talked about, when you go into nature, when you go and do your bushcraft activities, when you go camping, whatever you're doing, going for a walk, let's think about how that relates to your health. So I'm calling this a micro moment. In your micro moment, as you step outside this building going, this is my micro moment. How do you feel? Or what is this moment doing for my health? Maybe you have an answer, maybe you don't. But basically, my goal is to get you curious. In those moments, ask yourself, is this helpful for me? Is this serving me? Or is this not? How do I know? If my buddy's with me and I have this conversation, ask them, how is this moment serving you? That helps with the conversation. You start being curious, you start asking questions, then you start defining things. And then it might then as you go through your activities, it might change your approach to it. Instead of just processing firewood, you're like, this is my neat. I'm exposed to different things. Which is all about the health literacy. So remember how we went back to, or going back to this, how health literacy impacts your well-being, your ability to access, understand, evaluate, and communicate information. That promotes, maintains your health in a variety of settings across modalities and approaches throughout your life. So you'll see some of the seniors in our group here at Frostbite who are starting to have some mobility issues and then starting to look like, say, arthritis. I don't know what their age is, but if they didn't participate in bushcraft and outdoor activities, maybe that would have been them 20 years ago. Maybe they were able to delay how that arthritis impacted them for 20 years because of what they did do in nature. But then there is that whole thing of like their injuries that they got in nature actually led to the arthritis. So there's that side too. So there's no right or wrong, it's just the questioning. So when you're in your micro moment of me sitting in that chair or me just kneeling on the ground, how is that going to help me in later years? How is that going to serve me in this moment? Ask yourself these questions. So we have to meet ourselves where we're at. So what I would ask one person who's very new to bushcraft, new to fitness activities, my expectation for them would be different versus somebody who's been in the community for a long time. I'm going to use the analogy of going for a run. I would not take somebody who doesn't run and expect them to run a marathon next week, but somebody who often runs 5, 10, 15K, we could probably work and get them to do a marathon and a bit of enduring to be able to do that next week. So we have to meet each other where we're at and where our learning level is. So first time bushcrafters learning knife skills are going to be at this lower one here in the very basic level, similar to what many of us are on trying to understand what this is that Burr's talking about, the basic functionings that we need to engage in that activity, specifically for health literacy and engage in our health activities. Through more exposure, like first time you go in cold water, you're kind of going to be like that other guy of like, fast breath and high energy. And it might take you a few times to be able to be that in control of your breath, calm and smiling through it. That process brings you to the interactive stage, to be able to use that, how to have control over it and find comfort in that, and the hard skills and the soft skills of that task. Then there's the mastery. So using a bushcraft and the cold exposure kind of analogy of when you're sleeping in your tent and your wood stove falls apart and you no longer have your wood stove here, you have some awareness, knowledge, and physiological health things that you've done in the past all build you up to be able to cope in that moment. Like acclimatizing, like putting the snow on your ears and hands. You're able to cope with it better when you're at the more mastery level. So that goes with hard skills, soft skills of bushcraft and other activities, as well as the health literacy. So you start through a spectrum. And as you go through this process, you also, again, meet yourself where you're at and what your interests are and what your outcomes are. So somebody wanting to acclimatize to cold and altitude is not going to help somebody who, like some people who are at this camp, just moved here from Singapore. So they're at sea level in the tropics, warm weather, humidity, how they acclimatize and what they want for acclimatization is going to be different from the acclimatization that we're going to need in the mountains at 2 kilometers above sea level in the snow. There's different acclimatizations, different physiologies. But we can use those concepts of like saunas and other warm environments and cold pools and cold environments. We can use that to influence our physiology and our health. It's just a matter of why, how, when, what level, how that serves me. So again, with our goals is our interests, our direction, and our need. That's where your health literacy comes in of like, you might be a little confused of, I'm not sure what Burr's talking about, but once you have a pain point or something you want to work towards, then it becomes more clear once we start having a discussion. So you also want to start where our baseline is. So like that running analogy, if you've never run versus if you already run 15 kilometers, we need to figure out where your baseline is to figure out where and how and what stages we start at. We have to take in, when a health literacy point of view, what your health status is and what your risk factors are. So cold exposure, if you're somebody who's in their 60s, never done cold exposure, you got high blood pressure, you got type 2 diabetes, starting to show some sign of neuropathy, I'm going to give you a completely different program than I will if you were like 18 and you spend a lot of time in nature. And anyways, different risk factors, different baselines, different starting points, different treatment plans, different literacy around that. So the intensity, part of that goes with the intensity. You can go intense with some people fast, other people not as fast. And one thing that was really missing about exercise and doing different things is our recovery. Part of the stress management and stresses that we all live in modern life is because we don't actually know how to recover. So recovery doesn't mean recovering from addiction. Recovery means recovering from stressful things, from being out and going for a 20-minute walk in this temperatures outside and then coming in. How long do you feel chilled? That's a recovery. How long you feel chilled, does it always need to take you 20, 30, 40 minutes to warm up? Where this person doesn't feel like they feel too hot when they get inside. So there's different recovery points. So I like to teach people about recovery. And part of that is being more adaptable. Does anybody have any questions?
I just got one.
Yep.
Going back to where you're talking about the people with their kids saying, don't play the rocks, it's dirty and stuff like
Yep.
that. Those people are obviously wildly uncomfortable in nature. Would they have another well-being setting that is in the city that they could draw from?
Anything outside.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But say, what about like they're outside as going to the mall?
Meet people where they're at.
Okay.
So I'm going to use addictions as people at high risks and addictions, you use this harm reduction strategies. So it's not like abstinence is the goal. It's like, how can we make what you're doing easier, less intense, and just meet you where you're at and slowly micro steps forward. If your goal is abstinence, you may never get there, so you may never ever achieve that goal. And that goal might be your goal, but not my goal. So harm reduction, meet people where they're at, and just like that other thing of what's their interest, what's their aptitude, where's their baseline, just meet them where they're at and adapt. So it might just be like in an indoor garden. I don't know. My friend of mine did their PhD in how do you build and set up an environment for mindfulness that really brings up spiritual fulfilling moments. And so there's a lot of environmental design around that. So some parks, gardens, and internal inside gardens, I can't think of the name. Anyways, they have there's some research going around what brings well-being to people. So I'm gonna bring this dog up because they're also really good at microbiome. So they walk through all the bushes and everything. The Dr. Josh Axe, he talks about he goes for a walk with his dog, and as soon as they're done for the walk, he takes his hands, rubs his hands all over his dog, and then rubs his hands all over his face to get the microbiome that the dog just picked up and helps him. Anyways, reason why I have this dog here is treatment plans. For humans, treatment plans follow through is about 35 to 65% for humans, 90 to 100% for pets. So we take care of our pets better than we take care of ourselves. So here's our diagnosis for our bush medicine plan for all of you. We have too much stress, too much modern life. Let's get out in nature, do more bushcraft. The treatment plan, well, we're going to get to that. So follow up, of course, take burst courses. Sign up for our email list, follow us on social media. Now, forest bathing, I talked about more of this in the mindfulness session before. Forest bathing is a Japanese version of being out in nature. That's where you're walking on uneven ground, barefoot if you can. You're looking up and around, you're just present in the moment, hearing the birds, wind sounds, smelling the smells, feeling the breeze and temperature and humidity on your skin. You're just feeling all the senses in the present moment. There's a lot of research on Japanese forest bathing, which is equivalent to just walking out in nature and being mindful of how that helps high blood pressure, metabolic problems like, say, type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance, about mindfulness, stress management, and then just moving on the different grounds and how you functionally move and how that affects your mobility, strength, flexibility, range of motion. So we're going to take forest bathing and a fox walk. Fox walk is walking silently but being mindful of where you are in nature. So when you think of a fox walk, say you're tracking an animal just to watch it, to get a good view of it, say a rabbit or something. You don't want to startle it. So if you're walking and just like stomping, you're going to scare it away. You're never going to see it. So that's where we place each step mindfully, quiet, place that foot down, then you put weight on it. You're doing that slow breath, like not the deep breathing, but slow, quiet through your nose, full breath. You're in the moment, so you're listening, like making sure that you're walking quiet so the bushes against your clothing aren't making sound. So you aren't making any sound and movement and startling nature so you can get closer. So that's what I want you to think about. When you go out there, how many more moments can you have of being in a quiet fox walk, forest bathing situation? I can build my whole business model using fox walk and forest bathing as the treatment plan. So those micro moments, in each moment of like, how is this serving me? How am I feeling? What's going on? What can I do to be more mindful? Like just stepping quietly, breathing quietly. And be curious about what's going on. I'm like, why can't I do that? Why is it so hard to continue to breathe through my nose? And over time, to increase your toolboxes, the tools in your toolboxes, and how that micro moment helps in your health and well-being. Any questions? I just want to say, appreciate you all for being here. Thank you. If you see me again next year, because I'm super curious. Just let me know if anything after today, you're like, huh. I just noticed I was walking through, just stomping. All of a sudden I realized, no, stop, slow down. I'm going to look up, look around, breathe differently, walk differently, be more in the present moment. Whatever your story is, if you'd please share that with me next time you see me. Anyways, thank you for everybody for coming.
Thank you, Bert.
You're welcome.